over the last century.
The weekly news letter that resulted is called Redemption Songs. The genres range from jazz to opera to a lullaby sung by an incarcerated woman to her newborn in the free world. A lot of the music was captured with professional gear, though the recording setups varied. But the overall level of musicianship is striking. Like an R&B group called the Escorts, whose 1974 track is Disrespect Can Wreck.
It's like infectiously groovy.
And Shema says it also speaks to a deeper theme in American incarceration.
Prisons have always had a really strong tension and contradiction between punitive and rehabilitative aims.
Prisons in the 60s and 70s emphasized rehabilitation, which meant a lot of arts programs.
And that was a kind of golden age of prison music.
But in the tough on crime 80s and 90s, many of these rehabilitative programs were dismantled. This coincided with the rise of hip hop. Without resources, rappers in prison often recorded cheaply over phone lines. But recently, a label called Freer Records started going into prisons to produce professional recordings. One album is by an incarcerated woman known as B. Alexis, whose 2022 track, Black Barbie, appears in the newsletter.
I know the spotlight can get drastic because everybody's fake. All your friends are made of plastic.
B. Alexis is incarcerated in a prison in the South. We're not using her full name because she worries she could face retaliation from that prison. She's serving a 30-year sentence for murder.
Just coming from where I'm from, being who I am, it's so many strikes already against me.
B. Alexis wrote poetry while she was in solitary. Turning it into music has helped make her story about more than just her crime.
We still have life after whatever we go through, whether it's mistakes, whatever we dealing with, growing up, whatever, we still have life.
This is the heart of this project for Shema. The pathway it opens for empathy. He says the lack of empathy for incarcerated people is a big reason we're comfortable with extremely long and punitive prison sentences.
So I see music as a way to fight that cycle, to kind of break past people's empathy gaps.
And along with all the great music he's discovered in prisons, he's also found some hope. For NPR News, I'm Justin Cremon.
Growing free, hold on, wait for me. Hold on to your dreams, baby Addie.
This is Morning Edition from NPR News. Our theme music was inspired by B.J. Liederman. I'm Michelle Martin.
Marketplace Morning Report is coming up next, and then in 10 minutes at 9 o'clock, it's the BBC NewsHour on WNYC. Let's check in with London and see what they're working on. Hello, London.
Good morning, WNYC. I'm James Menendez. Today on NewsHour, the Pentagon's reported to be considering options for punishing America's NATO allies over their perceived lack of support for the war in Iran. We'll be getting reaction from Spain. Also, how a huge chunk of glacier is blocking the route up Everest. That's BBC NewsHour at 9 on WNYC.
Mid-50s and partly sunny now, partly sunny today, and 67 for a high. This is WNYC.
WNYC supporters include the Public Theater, presenting the world premiere of Girl Interrupted with Juliana Canfield and King Princess, based on Susanna Kayson's memoir with original music by Amy Mann. Begins May 13th. More at publictheater.org.
On the next Science Friday, we're celebrating Earth Week and where we come from.
You can say that we're made from the residue of the residue of the residue.
Thinking about our place in the universe. That's on Science Friday from WNYC Studios. Today at 2 on WNYC.
Marijuana gets a tax break. Marketplace Morning Report is supported by GEP. With GEP Key, Agentic AI, and GEP Smart Software, GEP is at the forefront in agentic procurement orchestration and autonomous supply chains.
From Marketplace, I'm Sabri Benashore. The Justice Department is changing its classification for some marijuana products, downgrading them from Schedule 1 drugs, which is the same level as heroin and LSD, to Schedule 3, the same level as drugs like testosterone and ketamine. The change applies to medical marijuana regulated under state licenses, and it could mean a major tax break for some cannabis businesses, as Marketplace's Henry Epp reports.
Anyone who sells Schedule 1 substances can't deduct business expenses from their taxable income, and that's had a big impact on cannabis companies, says Victoria Littman, a visiting professor of law at Roger Williams University.
So you can't deduct the rent or the salaries of your employees or most of the things you need to run your business.
Cannabis businesses often end up with a really high effective tax rate, upwards of 70%, Littman says. But now medical cannabis companies may be able to deduct their business costs, and that could free up a lot of cash, says Scott Greiper, CEO of Viridian Capital Advisors.
You're able to redeploy that former tax payment into scaling your business, hiring more people, standing up another store.
But things could get complicated, Littman says, because many cannabis retailers have licenses for both medical and recreational sales.
And so this creates sort of like an accounting headache where they're trying to separate out, these expenses are related to my medical program, these expenses are related to my adult use program, I can deduct the ones related to medical.
The industry and consumers may get more clarity in a few months. The Justice Department has scheduled a hearing for late June when it says it will, quote, evaluate broader changes to marijuana's status under federal law. I'm Henry Epp for Marketplace.
The White House is accusing China of industrial-scale IP theft of U.S. AI technology. That is according to the Financial Times. The director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy reportedly said entities based in China have been using U.S. AI models to train unauthorized models abroad. The Chinese embassy in D.C. said the accusations were pure slander. All right, let's do the numbers. Dow futures are down 0.2%. S&P futures are up 0.3%. NASDAQ futures are very up 1.2%. The yield on the 10-year Treasury is 4.33%.
Marketplace Morning Report is supported by Schwab. At Schwab, investors get choices ranging from self-directed investing to full-service wealth management all in one place. Learn more at schwab.com.
When we talk about who makes up the economy, we're often talking about workers who are formerly employed within a company, receiving a traditional paycheck of some kind, sometimes with employer-provided benefits and W-2s. But a lot of people find themselves working outside of formal employment, in a different part of the economy, the informal economy. That is generally defined as economic activity that falls outside of official regulation, so it's not taxed, it's not tracked, and it's mostly invisible to official statistics, but it also doesn't come with labor laws or protections. For more on what we mean when we refer to informal work, we're joined by Shelley Stewart. She's Chief Research Officer at the Workers Lab in Oakland, California. Shelley, good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so informal economy, what are some examples you can give us of that?
There's a huge range of activities. People who are paid in cash, a lot of work that happens in people's homes, things like cleaning work, babysitting, dog walking, street vending. If you've bought or sold something on Facebook Marketplace, you're probably participating in the informal economy. There's informal arrangements in landscaping, construction, agriculture. All of that are just some of the examples of informal work.
Now, I know literally part of the definition is that we can't see it, but how big is that economy here in the U.S.?
There are a few different ways that folks measure it, that we try to estimate it. One of those is that the IRS estimates a tax gap, a difference between what should be paid versus what is paid, and that's estimated to be about $600 billion. There's also measures that rely on surveys. The Federal Reserve does a survey of household economic decision-making that shows about 20% of people responding work outside of formal employment.
Who tends to participate in the informal economy?
Many, many people do. The makeup of the informal economy workforce is really diverse, and it includes folks from all backgrounds and all income levels. That said, women are more likely to participate than men. Black and Hispanic individuals and folks without immigration documentation are much more likely to do these types of work. It's also more common among younger workers, and increasingly we're seeing among retired workers, largely out of economic need.
All of this is very important work that has to be done in this economy. Does it matter that it's informal?
It's an important question. There are very real risks for people engaged in this work. There's a high risk of exploitation. These are folks not covered by any labor protections. There's no benefits. There's no access to health insurance or time off. People are not participating in social insurance programs. They're not accruing Social Security points. And so there's a lot of potential for people to be really taken advantage of.
What would it take to bring more workers into the formal economy? But also, do we want to do that?
To bring more people into the formal economy, we need to make formal work more accessible. So that means having pathways for immigrants to get jobs. We need benefits available to workers, including those who need a lot of flexibility and agency over their time. And we need a system that is not so complicated, both for workers and for businesses, especially small businesses, to do things above the table, to file taxes. The question of if formalization is a goal is an important one. Right now, there are a lot of people who really need informal work. And if we kind of just put all the efforts into formalizing work without really examining what barriers exist, we'd be leaving a lot of people behind.
Shelley Stewart is Chief Research Officer at the Workers Lab based in Oakland, California. Shelley, thank you so much.
Thank you.
In New York, I'm Sabri Ben-Achour, and you've been listening to the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.